All right, good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, June 17th, 2021, and we're going to get started with our pre-market analysis for the S&P 500 futures market. It's been somewhat of a crazy week here. Remember, on Friday, we actually rolled over our futures contracts. So we had futures contract rollover happening last week, coming into this week officially. That will end on Friday of this week when the expiration occurs. So we have the contract rollover for our futures contracts. We had the big FOMC meeting yesterday, which, the announcement of the results of that were yesterday. We had the meeting starting the day before that. And then, of course, on Friday, we have quadruple witching, which is when we have all four different types of financial contracts rolling over. So obviously we have our stock index futures expiring. We have single stock futures expiring. We have the stock index options expiring, and then single stock options expiring. So it's an event that only happens, I think, 4 times a year. And so we have a lot of stuff going on this week. So if you guys are wondering why the markets have been kind of slow and sideways, not only are we in the June and July months, which statistically are kind of the lowest volume months of the year, but we also have kind of the FOMC, the expiration of all these different contracts, and then our own contract rollover happening. So lots of stuff going on this week. I do want to point out yesterday that, remember, we were basically sideways and we had somewhat of a bearish bias off of the all-time high, and then had some bearish indications right after the open. So right when we came up to this 4150 level, we started to see basically bearish indications on a lot of time frames. But because of the situation, we basically had to be patient. But it did eventually break through, and I just want to point out very interestingly where we bounced, which was basically right off of the level that we identified in the room here just a few days ago, this 42.25.50. And if you look at the levels that we put on the chart as of the new contract here, 38.25.50 and 1550 down here, this blue line that's kind of being blocked by the 50% of the previous daily level right now. These are 3 levels that we've been watching on the charts for the last, ever since we rolled over the contract. So really less than a week here. And we basically held it to almost to the tick here all through the opening yesterday. And that was basically a spot where if you would have sold, you could have wrote it right into, and where did we bounce? Right after the 9 a.m. hour, right off of 2550, a level that we've been watching for a while, bounced around there for a while. And then remember 28 quarter here, let me just put it on the chart. That 28 quarter was that previous daily low that we had marked on the chart. And so we bounced between the previous daily low at 28 quarter and 2550 for quite a while. And then finally we're able to break through. And then when we started to break through, look where we found our resistance. 2550, the bottom end where we were bouncing earlier. And that level, again, is a level we've been watching for quite a while here. And then it proceeded to break. And from there, we went right through 1550. But when we came back, we found resistance within a tick or two of 1550. So it's just amazing that these levels that we've been plotting and watching seem to work over and over again here. And I just wanted to reiterate how well those levels have worked in just the first few days of this new futures contract. So let's jump to today and do our pre-market analysis. We're going to go to the ultra high time frames and see what's going on here. 3 months still not really indicating any signs of exhaustion in this local area. So same story on the monthly. No indications of exhaustion just yet. Of course, we do have basically 50% of the candle is a wick on the upside at the moment, but we do have 2 more weeks of price action, and so that could totally change. The picture can change, but right now, our quarterly and our monthly have no indications of exhaustion. Still holding strong. Everything looks very bullish. When we get to our weekly, remember this is where we started to see some trouble. So the weekly candle that closed for last week gave us our first bearish indication. And then, as I said, on this new candle, which did have all week to develop, we were also starting to get some bearish indications. And right now, at the moment, we do have today and tomorrow for this to continue to develop before this closes. But right now, you can see that we pushed just a little bit higher compared to the previous weekly candle.
Hey, Jay,
But we actually pushed a little bit lower. Hey, what's going on?
your feed's not working.
The feed's not working. Um,
Yep.
can
Take a
anybody...
look at the chat.
Let me look in here. Well, it looks like I'm broadcasting my mic, and from my end, it looks like I can see the charts. Like if I open my stream, it shows the charts. Is everybody else seeing it? It might be something on your end.
No, I'm not seeing anything, and the chat indicates a couple other people aren't either.
Chart is not moving. Here, let me restart. Let me start again. Let's go screen 1, go live. Try entering in again here into the screen. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, and your screen's back up.
Okay. So I don't know where I left off, but pretty much like we've been saying, the story has not changed on the quarterly or the monthly. So you guys didn't miss much there. But now on the weekly here, like we were saying, previous weekly candle gave us that bearish indication coming into this week. And then we broke that by another 10 points to the upside. But we still had some bearish indications. So hopefully everyone can see me here. And so on this new candle, you can see that we pushed a little bit higher and we pushed a little bit lower on RVI. So now we still have some bearish indications on the weekly. Now, granted, we have dropped from 42.58, which was the all-time high, all the way down to 41.85 into the overnight here. So we have fallen almost 100 points. And so I think this is a really good example of when you have a high time frame indications of exhaustion that you can get large pullbacks. So we're not talking 20 points, 30 points. We almost got an entire 100-point pullback off of this indication so far. So it could continue to carry through here because truthfully, if we do have daily and weekly and those type of time frames giving us exhaustion patterns, they can lead to these 200-point corrections or 300-point corrections. And so every time we start to see exhaustion here on the weekly, it typically will lead to a 200 to 300-point pullback. And right now, we've got just about 100 points out of it. So really, the only thing I wanted to mention here is we're still seeing that bearish indication on the weekly. Remember, now as we dial down onto our daily, the daily candle up here that made the all-time high, we didn't necessarily have that nice clear bearish indication. And I mentioned how we can go all the way back to the swing high from May 28th and make an argument that there is divergence there. Although I'm not a huge fan of that. I'd really like to see kind of like the setup we saw here where we have a higher high compared to a lower high on the indicator, but a lower high pushing to a higher high on price. Something like that up in here, or some type of subsequent candle type of divergence. I don't like going all the way back through all these previous swing highs and extrapolating from there, even though that if you had just a basic divergence indicator, it would just be showing you divergence off of all these pushes here. So there's an argument to be made for divergence there, but it's not the type that I would love to rely on. So we do have weekly and daily bearishness from that high. And then what I'm noticing right now off the current low, we do have a little bit of a bullish indication at the moment. Now the problem here, and this is something that's going to be important for those that are trying to understand how to do this type of divergence analysis, is if you have a divergence indication right here, but the bar that you're looking at has more time to develop. In this case, this bar is our daily bar. We have the entire session going into, what is it, about 1:30 Pacific this afternoon for this bar to officially close and for this signal to actually form wherever it's going to finally form at. So right now, if you were to do divergence analysis on this, you'd have an indication of some bullishness at the moment. The only problem is that this price could pull back all the way down and test this low here, which happens to be 41.5575. So we could come all the way down to 55.75 and still have a bullish indication here. So there's a lot of room in between. So it doesn't give us kind of an actionable type of thing to trade. But we do have the indications of some bullishness right now. But we have to keep in mind that price could still come all the way to 55.75 and make a double bottom here, and we'd still have that bullish indication. But once 55.75 breaks, that bullish indication will no longer be there. So just kind of pointing out that we do have a slight indication right now off of the previous daily low where we have an official signal and a closed candle. We don't have a bullish divergence, but off of the current candle we do. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense there. And then when we jump to our 4 hour, we do get some decent bullishness right here off of the candle that closed at 3 a.m. So when this candle officially closed, we did get a nice bullish indication here. And that was off of this push down on RVI. And so we do have that bullish indication on the 4 hour. It's official since the candle has closed, and some potential showing on the daily. So we're starting to get somewhat of a picture here of what's going on. And let's see if the 60-minute has any type of agreement. Now, unfortunately, the 60-minute is not quite agreeing. Now, again, we can go ahead and extrapolate all the way back to the last major swing low back here and make an argument. But that's not what I like to do. I'd like to see some type of local divergence rather than something all the way back here. I just don't like it. I don't know why. It just doesn't sit well with me. What I really prefer to see is something where price pushed down like this, but then we got to push up to an RVI. So maybe RVI came up, came down to here, and came up. Then we would have a really clear bullish divergence. So we don't have that on the 60-minute right now. And what we do have is an extrapolation from that major low from like 2.5 weeks ago, which I don't like. And so at the moment right now, outside of the bearish indications we got just before the sell-off yesterday, I don't necessarily see anything too clear in here. There's an argument for some bearishness earlier in the overnight session, but that's already carried through for about 10 points, and now they're recovering. Interestingly enough, if you look at the retracement there, pretty much right off the 50%, maybe a little bit lower than that. So right around the 50% is where they pulled back to, and it held, and look where they pushed to, the 27% extension. All right, and now it looks like they tried to pull it back, and now we're going to push a little bit higher. So right now on the 60-minute, I don't really see anything right now on this current candle. We do have another 40 minutes for this to develop here. And there's no, in my opinion, not a clear indication over here either. And so the 60-minute is not really helping us this morning, at least from the perspective that I'm looking at. So we'll keep that there. We have the daily and the 4 hour indicating some bullishness. The 60-minute not really showing much of anything. And now we'll jump to our intermediate time frames here. So again, here, see, now this is the type of thing I'd like to see. We have the push down to the low of the overnight, which was the extreme low from the all-time high. And you can see that we pushed up here. So this is a nice classic divergence off the low. So now we have a number of time frames giving us bullishness, and these are the higher time frames, which are typically the stronger time frames. So we have the daily, the 4-hour, and the 30-minute all giving us that very clear bullish signal off the overnight low. And now you can see they're trying to push things here. And then in this local area, just looking at what's going on, we did get a nice bullish signal here on the last candle that closed. So a lot of nice bullish indications so far, and not necessarily the strongest bearish signals here. We are kind of right around where we were when we were up here. So there's kind of an indication of some bearishness. But overall, I think that we have some really nice bullish indications so far on this 30-minute. And we're going to jump down to our 10-minute here and see if we do get some type of agreement off that low. And we do have a pretty nice extreme push down to test that 40 level on our RVI here off of that low. So somewhat of a decent divergence over here, especially off of that previous swing low. And so we have some decent agreement here for some bullishness, and no indications of exhaustion in the current push. So on the 10-minute, they're not showing like they are tired or done with the move. And the 30-minute, it does have about 7 more minutes to develop. We could get a push up higher here, but right now, maybe not so much of an agreement on the 30-minute. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Let me just kind of wrap it all up. Our two highest ultra high time frame charts do not indicate exhaustion. When we get to the weekly, we had exhaustion off of the all-time high. And then on the daily, we had an extrapolation where we could show that bearishness off the all-time high. But now that we pushed down almost 100 points, we are starting to get a little bit of a bullish indication on the daily. On the 4-hour, we have confirmation of that bullish signal. And then the 1 hour did not really give us a lot of information this morning. But when we jump down to the 30-minute, we do have a bullish indication off the low as well. And so we have more so some bullish indications off of the overnight low right now, and then some other bullish indications in the local area on some of our intermediate time frames. And so for now, we do have a decent bullish indication on most time frames.